Hello there. I'm your host Grim, or you can call me Jay. And this is a new series that I wanted to start called Grimm's Creepypastas. Let me know if you want me to keep this on this channel or make a separate channel for this. Well, I hope you don't mind me just reading off some stories, but also putting my own spin, twist, whatever on it. Without further ado, let me read to you. I worked as an overnight security guard at a local college. I quit after seeing something in the parking lot. Let's start. I had just gone through a pretty rough divorce a few months ago. For the brief 2 years my ex and I were married, most of our nights ended up turning into shouting matches and insults. We were always so loud we had gotten several noise complaints, and an eventual ultimatum that we would be thrown out of the building. Yikes. Anyway, we ended the whole thing, and she got the most of everything. The house belonged to her family, along with most of everything in it. Wait, that makes no sense. They would be thrown out of the building, but the house. She let me only have my clothes, some photos, and my dog Riley. I was short on money at the time. Luckily, a friend of mine let me stay in his home for as long as I needed. While there, I was looking for a better paying job to help me get my life back on track. My search led me to an opening for a campus security guard at a local community college. I arrived at the interview to learn that this was a job for the night shift. Not too bad. I wasn't too sure about taking the job at first, but my bills and growing debts weren't going to pay themselves off. Needless to say, I started the next night. The campus itself was a decent size, both in terms of area and the number of students. The core campus includes 14 educational and auxiliary buildings. The security office was by the south entrance of the college, situated on the second floor of the parking garage. The two senior security guards, James and Darnell, walked me through my job description. My task every night was to complete 2 full searches around campus, checking all the buildings and monitoring the security cameras. My shift would start at 9:30 at night and go through 6 o'clock into the morning, by which time I'd taken the bus back home. The job itself wasn't too bad. I kind of developed a friendship between James and Darnell, since there's a brief period of time our shifts would overlap. By the time they both left, it would be midnight for me, and I'd be all alone at that campus. It's so surreal how such a place that's bustling and full of students can quickly empty out and turn silent. Just like that. When my shift starts, there's usually a few cars left in the lot for those who took evening classes. Some instructors and other staff would sometimes work extra late, but those instances were rare. In short, my interaction with other people besides my coworkers was almost non-existent. Don't worry about the screen right here, it'll go back. I would pay YouTube Premium, but I'm saving up for a car at the moment. Without further ado, back to the red screen. Sometimes on break or in my in-between circuits, if it stayed quiet on campus, I'd read a book or listen to spooky stories on my phone. After listening, I would start to feel a little creeped out for being in campus all alone after dark. But I got used to it. It killed the boredom until I started my next circuit. I wouldn't find much of anything out of the ordinary aside from the random object left behind by a student, which I would bring back to the lost and found. I just had to make sure no one else was hanging around after closing. After coming back, I would check the security footage in case I missed something. There were a few screens recording specific spots with the most activity during the day. One for the parking lot. Well, one for each parking lot. One for each floor in all the buildings. And one for the administrative office. I got decent pay every couple of weeks after a while. I moved out of my friend's house and got a small apartment and was saving up for a used car. I felt my luck finally starting to turn around. Then I had the scariest experience of my life. One midnight, like always. The campus was always deserted at this time, like normal. It was summer during this time, so the night was pretty warm, bustling. Sometimes you might hear crickets, bugs, or whatever, but this night, this night was different. Pitch, eerie, darkness. I let out a warm sigh whenever I came in to do my shift. I felt like I was building a little sweat in my uniform system while doing my first circuit. I came back to the security office after finding nothing of note and checked the camera feed. I found nothing in any of the screens until I checked the one for the south lot, near the office. While the screen was small, I could still discern the moving of a very large shadow across one of the lampposts, which was weird. It was doing nothing but moving back and forth across the light. The shadow looked too large to be something of a small bird or animal. I deduced it had been someone that parked off screen so I couldn't visibly see them. I went out there to check things and found nothing there. If it might have been a person just screwing around and about. They would just have to leave at least a sign of their presence, you know? There was nothing left behind. I didn't hear a car drive off. No noise, no nothing. I scoped the rest of the south lot to find the source of the shadow. Still, nothing. I sighed in annoyance at the thought of somebody just trying to waste my time. Nothing else happened the rest of the night. I got used to sleeping during the day, but all I could afford to sleep on was a cheap couch that was anything but comfortable. It was rare that I got a full 8 hours of sleep, and to top it off, the AC unit had crapped out, which sucked. My cheap apartment had gotten warmer, making it much harder to sleep. Felt like a damn sauna. I got to the college at the start of my shift with maybe 4 or 5.5 hours of sleep. I don't know, but the coffee only lasts for so long. With it being extremely late, my office feeling cool and quiet everywhere. I started feeling drowsy. Sleeping on the job wasn't allowed, of course, but every now and then I would give myself a very brief nap. So I let my head on the desk and fell asleep instantly. I was later jolted awake. Instantly, something felt extremely wrong on my tired mind. But then I quickly swapped to alert mode and I woke up. I rubbed my eyes and checked the monitors to see if anything looked up. I looked at the camera feed for the south lot and my eyes narrowed. Beneath one of those lamp lights, something chilled me to the bone. A person was standing. Not doing anything, just being very still. I couldn't make out any details, but this person had very long black hair and looked very tall for almost they could oh my goodness, it looked like they were able to reach the light. I looked at the bottom of the screen and found the camera was still recording. Whoever the camera was recording was still showing it was there. That feeling jolted me very awake and it kept intensifying. Every goddamn second. I was aware of this, and I just couldn't stop shaking for whatever reason. This chill felt colder than the air inside of my office, and it kept creeping up my neck, and just the shaking got more and more intensing. So everything just felt off. My body felt like it was reacting to some type of danger that the image was giving off. Still, a weird person on security footage was not an excuse to not do my job. I got to the lot in under a minute, and I saw the person still standing underneath the lamp, just being dead still with their back turned towards me, and their head seemed to be bowed forward. As I approached closer and tried to get their attention, I found that this trespasser was very, tall, just like in the camera, but they were lanky and wearing a dirty white dress. I called out to her again, asking if she needed help, but she didn't respond. She just kept standing like a statue where she was. I reached out to touch her, and my hand retracted back from the burning sensation her skin gave off, as if she was set on fire. I let out a "God damn it" and shook my hand to cool it off, and the lady moved for the first time. Her head lifted upward as if finally acknowledged I was there. She turned around, and I started to start trekking backwards. Her body was of a humanoid, but she had the head of a goddamn goat or a ram. The fur was pitch black, contrasting against her pale skin and white dress. The eyes were red like burning embers, and strands of flesh hung off its curved horns. As I kept walking backwards, I sped up. I could hear it give off a deep, thunderous roar. I ran back towards the office, and I swear I could hear the damn thing sprinting after me. I ran like I had never ran in my life. Absolutely just blitzing towards that fucking office, and I barricaded myself in there. For good measure, I switched the lights off inside and called 911. I told them something was on the campus, and they sent someone over. I hung up and strained my ears to hear anything outside my office. It was hard to notice anything than the pounding of my heart just beating like a drum going into overtime. It felt like an eternity before I heard the knocking at the door. The cops notified their presence, and I slowly opened the door. They questioned me about what I called for. When I told them, they looked at me as if I was a mental patient or a drug user. I played the footage back, and there the thing was, at the very least, they weren't going to arrest me for making a fake emergency, but with the trespasser, there wasn't much that they could do. Sorry for breaking off your immersion, but this is the last bit of this story. They left, and I was alone once again. This time, I felt so afraid, more afraid of anything in my life. Not that I was alone, but the fact that I wasn't alone, and that thing was still out there. I took no chances. I waited in that office and kept the thing locked until the end of my shift. I left a note saying I resigned, and I never went back. Well, I would definitely give that story 1/3 of a chicken sandwich. 1/3 of a chicken sandwich. A third. Definitely picking up on things towards the end because, let's see, some weird goat lady that gave you a thunderous roar. Definitely building up the anticipation, but I expected something scarier. Was it scary? Of course. Weird goat lady after your cheeks. But that was a very interesting but generic story that I do love. Something to definitely give like a template for. Let's try to find another story. This one actually gave me chills. I love this. If you hear a siren, don't go outside. Doesn't that send chills? Something creeping down your spine. That alertness all across your body. Breathe in and breathe out. You're absolutely okay. You're fine. You're here with me. I awoke to the sound of a police car siren while traveling in Japan last summer. The siren wasn't overtly loud, but loud enough to wake me up. It didn't grow closer, nor distant, as if the siren, whatever its origin, was from something just stationary. Without getting out of bed, I reached for the curtain of my hotel bedroom window and groggily pulled it towards me, revealing it was still dark outside. I tried to see if it was from some rural area in Japan, far away from Tokyo. And what I soon realized was the low season, staying in hotels and hostels with little to no guests. That night I was sure I was the only person in the hotel, as the owner had gone home, and I didn't see anyone else there. I remember thinking it was quite spooky when brushing my teeth and walking back to my room to see the deserted corridor. These small towns I found myself in were quiet, dilapidated, and sparse thanks to population decline. A far cry from towns in the UK which I grew up in, with their tightly packed terraced houses, traffic jams, and police car sirens that sounded every night, responding to stabbings we'd read about in next day's local news. Not gonna lie, although this is creepy, I would much rather prefer this than the bustling city life. Hearing a police car siren was so trivial I lay my head back on the pillow without thinking much of it. Although crimes are rare in quiet towns such as this, they still happen occasionally. At any moment I thought I'd see red lights flash onto the room's faded wallpaper as a black and white police car speeds by. I waited, but no such lights appeared. It became increasingly weird to me, and I soon found myself becoming increasingly agitated, unable to figure out a reason. Why was I so agitated by the sound of a police car siren? Well, it probably went on for a couple of hours or whatever, right? Had I committed a crime and somehow forgotten about it? Nah, that sounds very dumb. Then I realized the siren sound wasn't of a Japanese car. It was from a British police car. Different countries' emergency vehicles have different sirens, and I was amused first upon hearing a Japanese police car a few days later. It sounded just like they do in the anime, thinking it was strange to hear a British police siren in rural Japan. Sorry about that, we now have the red screen going back up and running. Let's take a bit of a breather because I feel like things are about to start picking up. I hope you're ready, because here we go right back into it. I stood up to look out the window, concentrating to see into the darkness. Staying in smaller towns and cities, I'd realized unsettlingly, streetlight is as scattered as the people who live there and often non-existent. Sometimes after dark, the only light source is a lone vending machine in a bus stop that's used twice a day. It was an eeriness I never, ever would grow accustomed to in my time here. But outside the hotel, far down the road, was a flickering streetlight by a junction in the road. And further still, I saw the outline of the area's tsunami warning system. A metal tower, like a mobile phone mast, with megaphones atop facing every direction to warn of incoming tsunamis. Another trait of Japanese towns which isn't found in the UK. I'd walk past it during the daytime on my way to the hotel without paying much attention to it, having seen identical structures in towns I'd visited previously. I remember the sight of rust showing through its gray paintwork and not much else. I wondered if that could be the source of the sound. But why would it play the sound of a British police car, and so late at night? The streetlight flickered off, which scared me very immensely, and for a moment I saw only blackness until the light came back, and I let out a sigh of relief. and the tsunami warning tower was closer. I blinked, thinking I must be mistaken. It was late at night, and I don't always perceive things correctly when tired, but the siren was just slightly louder than it was a moment ago. I stared out the window into the night. Then slowly, the tower, or what I thought was a tower, stepped towards me. A skinny leg twisted from its metal framework structure, lifting and planting into the road before the rest of his lanky body repeated the same contorting movements on the other side. The upper body unfurled grotesquely, forward and backwards with each stride. Due to its slenderness, it moved like it weighed like nothing. I watched it take 4 steps towards me, unable to believe what I was seeing, until I was overcome by an amassing body of fear. I knew it was coming for me specifically. I was probably the only British person for miles, and yet chose to play a common sound in the UK. As it moved by the streetlight, I caught glimpses of the rusty surface, only then realizing it wasn't rust. It was flesh. Finally believing what I was seeing, I hid in the first place I could see, which happened to be a wooden table by the window. The siren grew louder and louder. It echoed throughout the room until stopping suddenly, an eerie silence in its place. I felt my heart thumping in my chest, my ears tingling through all out my body, and I tried to breathe as slowly as I could to make as little noise as possible. I felt as though something were outside, looking daringly into that window. I stayed still, not daring to look back. The silence was soon broken by a tap on the window, then a drawn-out scratch, repeatedly going over and over and over, agonizingly for the next few minutes. It sounded powerful enough to easily break the window if it wanted to, as if it wanted me outside, but I wouldn't move. I didn't dare to. The knocks and scratches continued slowly and rhythmically. Phrases in Japanese I didn't understand crackled loudly, sounding just like a voice spoken into the megaphone, garbled one after another in a lieu of the siren. Among the many words and sentences I heard which I understood in my rudimentary Japanese, "Kite kudasu," please come in, translated in English. It's a phrase I'd heard in Japanese evening classes I'd taken a few months prior. The voice sounded strangely like my Japanese teacher, though terrifyingly distorted, an amalgamation of numerous voices to synthesize the various words. Kite kudasai. Kudasai. Kinte kudasai. I can't say that. I'm sorry. But I'm going to try one more time. Kite kudasai. I heard it repeat 3 times. The only phrase I understood, and somehow it knew to repeat it. That's when I heard a click downstairs. From the hotel's front entrance, it understood how to use the fucking doors. I held my breath knowing the front door is locked at night, but wasn't sure what time. The doors shook like an earthquake while I sat there hunched underneath that table. I don't know how long this lasted, how long it shook the front door, or how long it howled through those megaphones. It eventually stopped. As suddenly as it began, but I stayed under the table long after daylight, too frightened to move. It was the longest night of my life. The sun was high in the sky. By the time I crept from underneath the table and grabbed my phone, after finding the nearest location of the Koban on Google Maps, I left the hotel and headed straight towards it. Upon exiting the hotel, I glanced at where the tsunami warning had been. It was gone. Then I glanced at my room's window, and the building exteriors for damage were none. I walked quickly to the Koban, looking over my shoulder frequently as I went, greeted by a skinny old police officer there, and in my best Japanese, I also had some help from Google Translate. I told him someone had tried to break into the hotel I was staying in. I chose not to talk about the siren and the voices, thinking it would be too strange. The police officer, with a regretful look on his face and looking down in a slight bow, told me there was nothing the police could do except for run a few patrols in the next coming days, and to inform the hotel manager, since nothing was damaged or stolen, and I couldn't or wouldn't describe what the assailant looked like, nor did I call while the incident took place. I silently cursed myself for not bringing my phone under the table with me. I sighed and just accepted. About to leave, opting to immediately cut this excursion short and return to Tokyo, I asked if someone moved the tsunami warning tower. The police officer looked up from the desk puzzled before his eyes wrinkled. He spoke in that calm Japanese voice people seem to reserve for confused foreign tourists and said, "We're 60 kilometers from the sea and surrounded by mountains. We don't need a tsunami warning here." I felt an immediately chill rush go down my spine upon hearing those words. Leaving at once to go and grab my things, none of the towns I stayed in were near the sea on thinking about it. All within mountain terrain, yet all towns had tsunami warning towers. They were everywhere. I could have sworn. Then I remembered the look the police officer had given when I asked about the tsunami warning near the hotel. He knew what I was talking about. I soon hastily packed my backpack and hurried to a desolate train station of a struggling third sector railway, the quickest way out of town. Eventually seeing headlights of an approaching train where two rusty tracks met in the far distance. I stood up eager to board as soon as possible. As I did, a huge flock of crows ascended suddenly from trees in the surrounding forest, fluttering upwards as though frightened by something. Then from where they fell off, something grotesquely tall lumbered amongst those damn treetops, too far for me to discern much detail, but I noticed the silhouetted outline of megaphones through branches before my view was obscured by the approaching train. I had never felt more terrified and happy to leave. Having since returned home, I thought less and less of the night and what I encountered, although my heart still misses a beat whenever I hear the siren of an emergency vehicle. Until a couple of weeks ago, when I stumbled on a YouTube video shared in the group chat. The video is titled, "Who is Siren Head?" I felt dizzy upon noticing the thumbnail. Watching it, I felt my heart thump in the same way it had that night, all those months ago. I'm sure what I encountered was indeed the Siren Head. I felt vindicated knowing I'm not the only one to have been stalked by it, but terrified to know Siren Head is very much real. Also slightly miffed some illustrator trying to pass it off as his own creation. I'm not sure if there's anything we can do to stop Siren Head or any reliable advice I can give, but if you ever hear a siren or a megaphone late at night, never go outside. And that concludes our 2-story creepypastas that I found off of r/stayawake. Don't forget to just go and read these for yourself if you want to. Let me know if I did pretty good with this new thing that I want to create. I'm going to give this sandwich 3/4 of a chicken sandwich. Absolutely golden. 3/4 of a chicken sandwich and 3 cold fries. Hey, yum yum. If you made it this far into the end of the video, type in chicken sandwich. Until then, have a good one. Also, today is my birthday. If you want to say happy birthday or anything, just leave it there. I read everything. In the meantime, please stay safe. And if you hear sirens, don't go outside.